Good evening to all of you. Hope all of you have had a smashing day. I'm Richard Daniel, joining from Colombo. So, first and foremost, before we kick off, I would like to share a few housekeeping rules and announcements from the organizing committee. You have joined the Zoom webinar, and the only way to interact with our panelists is via chat. So, please send all your questions to the panelists in the chat icon, which is located at the bottom of the Zoom webinar. The workshop runs for an hour, and I will ask you a few questions. I will ask a few questions for the panelists before we open the floor to the audience. I also suggest you to stay till the end of the workshop as we have a couple of exclusive giveaways for you. So welcome to Brisca Education's workshop of Power BI, specifically designed for accountants. So without further ado, introducing our first panelist all the way from Australia. He is currently the manager for QIC, located in Australia, and he has a wealth of 10 years of experience. When it comes to QIC, it is one of the largest government-owned investment companies, and he is none other than Mario Di Costa. Mario, it's a pleasure to have you with us on board. Thank you so much for joining us, especially, with the time difference. If I'm not mistaken, it should be pretty late in the night for you, huh?
It is. Thanks, Daniel. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah. And now, speaking of our first panelist, it is time to introduce our second panelist. For the second panelist, he is a well-known data analyst and Power BI expert. He's currently consulted globally for his expertise. Please welcome Rakib Ahmed from Oman. Rakib, it's nice to meet you.
Thank you so much, Daniel.
How's things going?
Pleasure to be here. Yeah, very good, very good. Enjoying the environment and the 125 participants so far. And thank you everyone for joining.
So first and foremost, let us welcome, the audience who has joined here with us today. I should say that count each and every one of you lucky to be a part of this workshop, because we are about to unveil some key insights individuals are striving to find, which you would not get anywhere else. So once again, kudos to all of you who have joined with us today. So let's kick off this exclusive session with my first question geared to Rakib. Rakib, now that we have all gathered here, I mean, if you can give an idea to the audience, including myself, so what is the position of Power BI in a world, driven by business intelligence and data analytics?
Thank you, Daniel. That's a very, very good question to have at the beginning of this session, basically. So now, in order to understand where Power BI fits into business analytics and business intelligence as a whole, you have to understand where Power BI comes from, right? In around 2012, 2010, Microsoft realized two things. The first one is the amount of data that businesses are producing and the amount of data we're producing year on year is increasing to such an extent that we will not have enough analysts to analyze that data anymore. So, and they realized the second thing, which is basically majority of the companies are doing all of their analytics on Excel, primarily using Power Pivot, Power Query, and the limited visualization capacities that Excel had. And what they decided to do is build on top of that, right? And they created Power BI in 2012 and launched it. So the philosophy of Power BI is basically, again, can be summed up into two words. One is self-service analytics. That's number one. And the other is empowerment, right? So with self-service analytics, what Microsoft intends to do from 2012 to 2018, and even now, is give the users of those Excel sheets the capacity and the ability to analyze their data using Power Pivot and Power Query, right? And give them a massive host of data visualization capacities and capabilities that they will use on a day-to-day basis, rather than relying on external or separate departments in for business intelligence and business analytics, right? That's the self-service part. Now, leading on to that is the empowerment part. So Microsoft wanted to empower every single person in a company that uses Excel to analyze their reports, create their analyze their data and create reports, to have their own, analytic software where they can analyze massive levels of data. So Microsoft is positioning themselves, right, with this philosophy and this history as a replacement to Excel analytics. Excel can still be used as a database, but that analytics will shift to Power BI, right? And that is a massive market, right? Imagine in every single company, even our audiences will agree that they have Excel reports in every single department. Now imagine shifting that to Power BI. And the main theme here is that there's no learning curve involved. You can directly shift from Excel to Power BI in a matter of a week of just playing around and experimenting. Even right now, in 2023, Power BI is the leading analytics tool used across the world, closely followed by Tableau, then Alteryx, and then Zoho Analytics, Google Analytics, etc. But with that philosophy, Power BI is leading the sector of analytics because of the fact that it's self-service, empowering, and it's so simple to learn and use on a day-to-day basis. Make sense?
Indeed, Rakib, it was a very insightful answer, I would say, and it doesn't get any clearer than that. And you did, including, you did spoke about everything, including the inception, how collectively Excel and Pivot, how it works in collaboration, how it makes Power BI, and how also in terms of having, already having a certain knowledge in Excel, you could easily, move into Power BI. So with digitalization increasingly becoming a thing, there tends to be a lack of awareness, especially amongst our local community. So as you are based in Australia, Mario, when it comes to migration, do you think it's vital to have a knowledge on, of data analytics? And if so, why Power BI specifically?
Yeah, that's a great question, Daniel. I think, look, it is a highly spoken topic here, reporting and analytics and data and AI. So, if you are planning on migrating to Australia, we do a lot of what we call management reporting and influencing, and we spend very little amount of time in the transactional accounting. So. And what we're seeing as a trend here is a lot of outsourcing. So a lot of the transactional accounting or compliance type work's getting outsourced into center of excellences in other countries, or they're getting automated. What we're seeing though is a big upshift in what we call business intelligence center of excellences or reporting center of excellences, because they're the ones that work with the business on the ground. And these skill sets around Power BI and data analytics is very key for these roles, largely because you're trying to swift through large sets of data, just like Rakib said. You want to try and do that in Excel. A lot of organizations do it in Excel, but it's very inefficient. But if you can move that over to something like Power BI, you can easily tell that story and also have really, really cool visuals, and with very little amount of skill set required to transition from Excel over to Power BI. Now, what is very important, I guess, from a future perspective is as well, more and more automation is coming in the ERP space, so less transactional and more telling the story. So the businesses are demanding for more of influential decision-making data points. So there's going to be a continuous demand, especially in that what we we call it here financial performance and analytics teams or reporting center of excellences, but probably more it's traditionally management accounting effectively. But for those teams, having Power BI skills are almost a must now in the Australian market, and especially when you enter into the market as well. And having those skill set really puts you ahead of a lot of people.
I totally agree with you, Mario. It's a very interesting point that you made there, especially, yeah. So we do understand you have, it's like you hit the nail on the head. The world of data analytics is indeed vital, and it's something that we have to all embrace sooner or later. So speaking of which, Mario, we understand that data analytics has played an integral role in shaping who you are today. In this context, my next question would be if you could share some of your personal experiences with us, how it has shaped you on both personal and at a professional level as well, Mario.
Yeah. To answer this question, I might give a bit of background on my journey. So I think that's probably the best way to answer this. As probably a lot of panelists, a lot of the attendees are here today, I was an accountant. So I started my career in technical accounting. I worked across all the traditional functions of accounting, like tax, audit, management accounting, and financial accounting. But I really started to enjoy working in sort of process improvement space, and I always wanted to do more in that space. And I luckily got some really good opportunities to work in a couple of ERP implementations early in my career. So this was sort of early sort of 2000 and early 10s, I would say. So around 2013, 14. I could start seeing the shift of ERPs happening. And then along with that came the reporting tools, because a lot of organizations went and implemented cloud-based ERP systems. And then the next step straight after that was the reporting tool implementation. So which is really good experience for me to start getting early in my career. So which meant that I started to sort of build a niche set of skill sets, had very good base understanding of accounting, and then had implemented multiple ERP systems, so understood how the data flows, and then on to the reporting side. So the reporting side is the more, I guess, the flashy side, because it is quite nice when you start building really cool dashboards for the executive teams and the leadership teams, and being part of those influential decisions. As I was doing this, I could start to see where the industry was heading. That was kind of starting where it was starting to pick up. Accounting was shifting. A lot of things were getting centralized. A lot of things were getting outsourced. And you could see the reporting part was what was going to be kept more in the Australian context, and in the Australian shores, I should say. And then over time, I decided, okay, I need to develop my skills around this space. I worked with lots of different tools. I went and did my own research. So I worked with Power BI, Tableau, and some Oracle tools to make sure I kept expanding my knowledge around the data space, which then meant that I could transition into multiple different roles. It wasn't just limited to accounting. So taking my example, I'm reporting on performance and analytics across the organization, not just within finance now, but also when I was in the consulting world, there was different pieces of work that we managed to do. So the doors and opportunities opened up for me personally and professionally as I was developing my skill set. Accounting was a great baseline, but doesn't limit. When you start developing those data and analytics skills, it doesn't limit what you can do. You can go into, it opens up doors for different streams of work.
Wow, Mario, I would say that is a really, really long journey, I would say, for you. I mean, it's pretty much, of an insightful answer that you gave. So as you said, it is not just, theoretical. So it's a practical expertise and how, the world of analytics. And to spice things up even further, we have two surprises, I would say, coming up to the audience. So we would unveil it as we move on with the workshop. So basically, these are two of the perks I believe that we all have. We most of them would really love once they get to know. So let's go as what you said. So, Rakib, I don't think you might not like this very much because my next question is a power pack of three questions in one. So, firstly, is Power BI, new to the world of technology, or is it just a matter of a lack of awareness? And if so, secondly, as you are a global expert with experience, working with companies all over the globe, where does Sri Lanka stand in contrast with other European and Asian countries? And thirdly, if so, do you think the demand will have an exponential increase over time, Rakib?
Yeah, this is a fabulous question actually. The three parts to this is basically one is Power BI new, and is it widely used? That's the primary focus of the question. Second is where does Sri Lanka stand in terms of the global market and the trends that are coming up? And then is there a demand, right? So the let's start with the first one. Power BI is not new. It has been here since 2012, like I've said previously, right? But what's the main catch? Let's talk about in terms of Sri Lanka. I think then I can answer all of it together. Sri Lanka is still a developing country, just like Bangladesh, where I'm from, India as well. Although India is a little bit ahead of us, and it's still a developing country, right? So we still have companies who are more reliant on Excel-based analytics. We have timesheets which are still manual. A lot of manual processes still exist. So what's happening is the demand in the South Asian continent is still a bit low compared to other countries. For example, if we take Australia, for example, every single company is using Power BI, as Mario has stated before. It's a must skill to have, right? So where's the difference? So every company or every country, even in Sri Lanka, will go through this journey, right? Sri Lanka is still in its infancy in terms of Power BI. People are getting to know about it. Workshops like these are being held, and people are getting aware that Power BI exists. So it's starting off its journey. Whereas, let's say where Mario is, Australia, it's a bit more mature. The journey is reaching its peak. Everybody's using it. Everybody's, capitalizing on the tool that is Power BI. And let's say Western countries, for example, Middle East or Europe or America. What's happening there? The maturity has peaked. So every single company that can go into Power BI is going into Power BI, even if they have SAP or Oracle or any other ERP. The data analytics part or the front end of it is being done in Power BI. So there's, let's say in Sri Lanka, if we take it in terms of percentage, 5% of the entire population is aware of Power BI. In terms of Australia, 60 to 70% of business individuals or corporate officials are aware of Power BI, whereas in Middle East, Americas, Canada's, European countries, 100% are aware of Power BI, right? So that puts Sri Lanka into a context. So it's starting its journey, and that also answers one more part, which is the demand aspect of it, right? So Sri Lanka is going through a journey, right? So at the end of the day, everybody will be using Power BI or similar analytics tools, right? So let's focus on Power BI where it is right now. Australia, so Sri Lanka will follow Australia, Australia will follow Europe in terms of data analytics and its practices, right? So if we follow that trend, in Sri Lanka itself, the demand will go up. In Australia, the demand will go up. And in America, from Power BI, it will move on to Fabric, which is the upcoming version of Power BI and the whole holistic approach to data analytics, right? So I think that answers your question. Power BI is not new. It has been around. Sri Lanka is getting aware of Power BI and it's following the trends of Australia and America, and it will learn, everybody will learn and accept and use Power BI, and it will grow and grow and grow. And the demand of Power BI at the ultimately will reach its peak in the next upcoming 2 3 years, where Sri Lanka is predicted to boom in terms of its economic performance. So
Wow, it
yeah, I
sounds
hope
very
that
promising,
answers.
Rakib.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's a very, very promising skill to have, and I also think about it like this. Let's say if you learn a skill like Power BI in Sri Lanka, right? You practice it, you develop yourself. Let's say the demand is not there for Power BI right now. For example, where I'm from, Bangladesh, demand for Power BI is not there in Bangladesh, right? Majority of the companies are not using Power BI. what has happened? I've moved to the Middle East where the demand is there, where I am required to come and serve. So if you don't have a demand in Sri Lanka, it's not a problem. You can still learn it and go to a place, for example, like where Mario is in Australia, where the demand is there, where you can add value, where you can implement that skill and use that skill at a higher level, right? And then if you want, you can come back to Sri Lanka in the next 5 6 years as an expert in Power BI and lead the industry. It can be done, right? It's up to the user and whoever wants to learn it, basically.
It is a very, I would say, another insightful answer. It's very interesting, how we put it that way. So, even though, as you see, Sri Lanka is still, as you said, Sri Lanka is still in the growing stages of it. So even though there might tend to be a lack in that aspect, you could always go there, go to other countries, get experience, come back, and then, implement what you have learned in a country like Sri Lanka, which has a lot of endless possibilities for development. So, yeah, so for our audience, once again, let me reiterate to you, we have a couple of exclusive giveaways coming. So let me just give a bit more of an insight now. So it's 2 giveaways that's going to be given at the end of the session. So you don't want to miss that. So please stay tuned till the end of the session. And as you said, Rakib, now, when it comes, in a country like Sri Lanka, so I do understand, sadly, in comparison to other countries, Sri Lanka is still in its development still stages. But, that's what makes it, have a plethora of opportunities, right? In terms of, implementing, because it hasn't done before. So what are the benefits, Rakib, of utilizing Power BI in a country like Sri Lanka, taking into context, the development of the country? So what's the benefit it entails both in the context of an individual and overall to the country?
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, let's look at benefit. Let's define the word benefit before we even start to answer this question. Uh, Benefit I would look at, right, in terms of Power BI, there are 3 levels of benefits. One is purely personal. What am I getting out of learning this skill, right? Or what am I getting out of learning Power BI? That's the first part of it. Second part of it is your company, where you're working, what value or what benefit are you providing to that company itself, right? That's the second part. And then third, globally or to your country where you are, what value are you adding there, right? So let's break that down into 3 different parts as I wanted to. And I wanted to elaborate basically. So the first benefit is the personal benefit, right? Now, whenever we talk about learning a skill, any skill, it doesn't have to be Power BI. It can be video editing or freelancing or anything that it will give you benefit if you can market it, if you can sell it, and if you can, take advantage of it. So Power BI is a skill that's in massive demand across the globe, right? Maybe not in Sri Lanka right now, but 2 3 years from now there will be massive demand, and even now the demand is growing. So that's the personal level. So you get exposed to the market, you can move to a different country, and you can get benefits, financial as well as personal benefits out of learning Power BI. That's the first one. So what's the second part is the company level benefit. If you are skilled in Power BI, you can introduce it to your company who are still probably in Excel field or still doing a lot of tasks manually. What that would do is add value to the company, add decision making capacity to the company, and you would be valued again as a valuable asset to the company, right? So that's the second part to it. So you can actually add value back to the company that you are in. That's the second one. Third one is as a country as a whole. Now, if we look at a country, how does it earn money? How does it benefit? It's basically the amount of revenue that the country can generate from this particular skill. So let's look at it as a holistic approach, right? So if you personally benefit, let's say if you can use Power BI like I'm doing as a freelancer working globally, you will be able to bring back money to the country, right? You can, like, for example, I'm working here in Oman, I'm sending money back to Bangladesh, which is being credited as remittance. So the Bangladesh economy is growing, right? That's number one. Second is I am a skilled individual now, right? I know Power BI, I know data analytics, I know process improvement, etc., robotic process automation. I can now add value and create a generation of data analysts, robotic process automation experts, technical experts who can add further value. So it's like a pyramid, right? You grow and you grow and you take people with you, you transfer your skill, you translate your skill and you pass it on. And that enables companies to grow, which in turn allows the country to grow. So if you develop a skill that is in high demand globally, you can attract value for yourself, you can attract value for the company that you're in, and you can attract value in terms of remittance for your country as well, right? It's a massive cycle of benefits if you can learn a particular skill. Now, many of you might have expected me to say, oh, okay, it gives you a lot of good visuals, it gives you a lot of analytic capabilities, go into technical aspects of it, right? But ultimately, Power BI boils down to what you can do with it, right? You can do analytics with it, you can do a lot of things with it, but what's the benefit? The benefit actually there as a person, right? As a company, as a country, that's the benefit, where you can attract value, you can create value for yourself, for your company and your country. I hope it's a bit more theoretical, it's a bit of a macro view to it, not a micro view. I don't think you were expecting the macro view of it, but that's the macro view of it, from taken from my experience directly, where I have left Bangladesh and come to the Middle East and working with multiple countries across Europe, America, and Australia, basically. So yeah, I hope that adds a little bit of um, context to what benefit is, basically, whenever you're learning Power BI as a global skill. Daniel, you there?
Yes, I'm there, Rakib. It was it was such an insightful answer that, I was taking notes myself because, it's really, I mean, it's an eye opener, I should say. So we can all agree Power BI, no doubts, we can all agree that Power BI is indeed a tool of immense vitality. So my next question is now, geared to Mario. So in the context of now we all know about Power BI, and Rakib shed a lot of light, as to what it is, what the functionalities are and all of that. However, if we are to bridge it, in the context of accounting, Mario, what's the importance of Power BI specifically for accountants? If you could shed some light on that, Mario.
Yeah, exactly. That's again, that's a really good question, and I think I'm going to steal some of the stuff from Rakib's answer as well. I think he's given a very good good view of that macro space, and I'm probably looking at the technical side. How does it then apply to the accountants? First off, it is a great dashboarding tool. You can slice and dice the data and make it look nice and be able to tell the story very quickly and easily. I guess the benefit really comes down to then, yes, you can put a dashboard together, but then how do you draw that insights and data, or the story behind the numbers is also very important. So Power BI gives you that kind of ability. In Excel, as accountants, especially in my early times in my career, we spend a lot of time doing error checking and a lot of time reconciling numbers to make sure the spreadsheets match up. And very little time actually analyzing the data and really understand the story behind the numbers. I think what Power BI allows us to do is automate a whole bunch of those really manual tasks that we do, like reconciling, checking numbers, checking spreadsheets, all of that, and have a more automated process with more governance around it, and also more auditability and traceability, and a lot of automation. So instead of copy pasting and doing all these things, we can just run. We can put some Excel files into a location, and you can quickly grab them, refresh them, and your dashboards refresh. So your reports are a lot quicker. Your turnaround times are a lot quicker. And when the organization asks for different cuts and slices of that data, it's a lot easier to do that in Power BI. Whereas if we were to do it in Excel, we're writing lookups, we're writing formulas, we're making sure that all these numbers are adding up. So we spend a lot of time in actually doing the data preparation and building the report and not analyzing the data. I think that's a key shift that we're seeing here. We spend very little amount of time in getting the data to a state that you can report to, because we spend more time in the analysis piece and working with the business, understanding what's happening. Are the numbers telling the right story, or what is the story that we need to work out? And what are the key problem areas? We start to dive into those deeper conversations. So the conversations start to shift. It's no longer, hey, is that number right? Or it's more, okay, what do we do about it? Okay, what changes are we going to do in the business? So we're starting to see that big shift once we start using these reporting tools, because we're not spending time doing a lot of work in preparing it. And I think going back to a couple of the points that I touched earlier, there's a big demand in the decision support space in Australia, and we try to automate a lot of the transactional compliance accounting, as I would say. So like financial accounting, we see that as more compliance, so that's right. A lot of our companies are investing to automate, but that decision support space is growing, and we're seeing that trend, and it will continue to grow, and it's going to be very difficult to bridge those skill gaps. So there's going to be a huge skill gap in the future, where accountants with data skills is, at the moment, they're a little bit unicorns, bit of a unicorn in Australia. So, but over the time, yes, there will be more people, but it's going to keep increasing as we go, and the demand's going to keep blowing out, and then we're going to have a massive skill gap. So there's going to be some really good opportunities for people with Power BI reporting tool, well, especially Power BI, because that's the easiest one to transition into, and a lot of the mid-sized organizations are using to sort of move into this market, and also be able to be, I guess, adapting to the new trends in accounting.
Wow, that was one heck of a practical insight, Mario, that you just gave. I mean, it all puts things together, because Rakib very tactfully showed in terms of how things worked, and then you bring the practical approach of the insights. So it works hand in hand, and I would say it's indeed it makes sense. It makes sense to a lot of things. So we have been, I should say, we are getting flooded with a lot of questions that I can see here. So anyways, we will, put the flow down in terms of addressing such questions when the time comes. So moving on, actually, to the next part of my question, Mario. Now, I would say this is a bit of a much, needed one, because we have a lot of youngsters, in this ever competitive arena, looking for that competitive advantage. And, it's everyone's dream, to have a prospective job with a good salary, excellent career development opportunities. So in the context of, accountancy, Mario, do you think a technical know-how will give them that edge, of being highly sought after by prospective employers?
Yeah, definitely. I think 10 years ago, it was very new, but now it's becoming almost, it hasn't become a mandatory skill set here, but it is becoming almost like a must-have skill set here. So especially people coming out of, university or graduates coming through, we do look for and that additional skill set in the data and analytics space, or the willingness to learn, or the interest in that space, because that is where I see accounting sort of slowly starting to move, largely because the accounting industry has not very much moved from that transactional accounting to doing a lot of analytical work and working with the business and being influential. And a lot of research has been done by the Big Four that speaks to lots of the global CFOs, and all of them sort of come back saying sort of the accounting function is rapidly changing, because we have some really, I guess accounting is seen as the most cleanest set of data. So we control the data. So a lot of the organizations rely on that most up-to-date and clean set of data. So that's then being able to draw upon all that data sets and being able to influence is becoming the more quite important skill set into the future. Now, as you enter the market, if you see someone with data and analytics skill set and someone without, especially in that sort of management accounting or financial planning and analysis space, the person with the data analytics skills are going to be well ahead of the person who doesn't. So I think data is becoming a requirement. There's lots of data, and finance teams touch on a lot more spaces than just financial accounting. They touch on now pulling sales data. We now call it over here enterprise social and governance data. We're pulling data around what's happening in the global markets and trying to work out trends and patterns to then over time to move into sort of the AI space as well. So I think in the future, you're going to have to not only just know the reporting side of it, but also start developing those skill sets around the AI, machine learning, and Gen AI. So I think it's quite important to develop these skill sets. To answer your question around salary and career development, I think the salary will come as far as you develop your skill set and show that value, just like Rakib said. When you start showing your value to your organization, that's where the salary comes in. And to show that value, you need to have some skill sets that you can differentiate from others. And in terms of career development, like I pointed out earlier, when you start to go into the DNA space, your opportunities expand exponentially. You're not now limited just into the accounting world. You can work in supply chain analysis. You can work in sales analysis. There's a whole lot of work that you can do outside of the finance space.
It was a very excellent answer, Mario. I mean, I'm still, processing everything you said. I mean, it is quite a lot. And yes, you need to have, a certain, if you want to, proceed further, you need to develop your skill sets. You need to, expand, horizons, and eventually you get there. You get there to where you become. So, Mario, now since Mario already spoke about the development aspect of it, how we can perhaps bridge this in terms of the gap in terms of education. What is speaking of our youngsters, what is the best that they can expect? I mean, where do you think the future of accounting is headed to next in the years to come? How can we prepare them for this future?
That's a very good question. Knowing what the future holds will enable anyone to prepare for it, right? That's the thing. So my perspective and Mario's perspective will be different because we look at the function of accounting differently. I look at it from a process perspective, and Mario looks at it from details, like going into every single sector, right? He practices accounting. I understand accounting. That's all, right? That's the difference. But coming from my perspective, I think Mario will chime in soon, is basically future is defined by leaders, right? So if you want to know what the future in Sri Lanka is like, look at Australia. If you want to know what Australia's future is like, look at the Middle East and Americas, right? So if you think about it like that, what are we doing right now in South Asia? For example, let's take Sri Lanka. If we have accountants in here today in the audience, they will agree with me that I think the accounting team or the finance team are the people who come into the office the earliest and leave the latest. From 10 p.m. to 11 p.m., I think people will agree with me on this one. That's how long the accounting team are staying there. What are they doing all of that time? Are they having chit chats? No, they're constantly processing documents and entering data. That's in South Asia, that's in Bangladesh, that's in Sri Lanka, that's in India as well. Now, you'll be surprised to know in Australia, that's not what happens. The team leave at 4, 5. They leave the earliest because the data entry aspect of it has been minimized. Majority of the data that people in South Sri Lanka and Bangladesh and India process are bills, invoices, vouchers, work orders, everything, right? So even they're performing auditing functions as well. So this will be digitized, just like it is in Australia, just like it is in Middle East and Americas. So what will happen is the data entry will go away, and automated processes will come in, whereas the role of accountants will rather become decision makers, or what Mari was talking about, the space of decision support space is increasing, the scope of that is increasing. That's what the future will be. So accountants will be decision makers and predictive analytics experts who will forecast where the business is headed, where the money is, what we have to do, and drive the steer the business in the future, right? Whereas right now majority of the accounting teams in Sri Lanka and Bangladesh are doing manual work, right? That's what I feel. Now if you want a practical example of that, then I would like to give an example like this. So in Sri Lanka, if you hire a junior accountant or fresh graduate, what are they doing? Just look at that. The fresh graduate in Sri Lanka, when they join a company, they're entering data, they're processing documents, they're, just going through hundreds of thousands of bills every single month, every single year, and just staying there day in, day out, entering data. Whereas in Australia, Middle East, and Europe, the fresh graduates are the ones who are doing data analytics. They're doing analyzing the data. They're not entering the data. They're processing and reading the data and predicting the future for the company. So you see the roles here. That's the future. Manual work will go out with Oracle and SAP and even Power Platform coming into play. Automation will take over, and Power BI will lead in terms of the data analytics and future predicting the business future, basically future of the business. Mari, if you want to chime in here.
Yeah, definitely, and I think you nailed it on that, Rakib. The way that we work here, when a new graduate comes through, one, the graduates actually don't want to do any data entry because that's the more boring part of the job, right? So they straight away want to sort of learn about analyzing data, or how do you influence. So our graduates don't spend much time in the data entry space. They do a little bit more on the input forecasting or gathering the data, so some of the data inputs to do those predictive analytics, but not so much entering bills or transactional stuff, because that is heavily automated. So RPAs, OCR technology, even AI built into the OCR technology. A lot of sort of machine learning's already quite majority of the larger companies is quite apparent. You can see them, but when you go to the smaller companies, even the smaller companies now, even with some of the smaller softwares, they've got AI engines built in and OCR and RPA type capability built in. So a lot of the teams, what they do here is pretty much analyzing the data, and what that allows is then the leadership team to be more nimble and be able to make decisions a lot quicker, and also increase the job satisfaction of the people in that starting space as well, because you're not entering lots and lots of data and reconciling lots of spreadsheets. So exactly, Rakib, it's a very valid point, and this is where we're seeing the big shift. And now that Gen AI is coming in, I think that's even going to shift even further, because it's probably going to take another step forward by reporting that Gen AI already analyzing the level 1 analysis, providing the level 1 commentary to reporting, and then we bring in our teams to then do the core analysis or the storytelling, because the AI is very different. It's hard for them to tell the full story because they don't have business context, but they can do the level 1 analytics. So it's a big shift, and I think future of finance is changing rapidly, especially with now ERP. A lot of the organizations have implemented cloud ERPs, and they can pull a lot of data out very quickly, a lot of data points. So Power BI type tools will automate that reporting process. They're not sitting there spreadsheets, copy pasting. None of that's going to happen. It's going to be connected right directly to source data sources. And some organizations are even implementing sort of master data to house everything from at a top level that gets pushed down. So I think it's rapidly changing, and being able to understand all that is becoming key. And as an accountant, to understand the whole flow of that work as well. So our newbies understand the flow, but they don't do the flow. If something goes wrong, they can investigate, but they don't do the flow.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of, you can look at it in many ways, Mario. So yeah, that is, I mean, I would say that's the best way out of all the ways. And it's a really, again, it's a really, really, you took us on a journey, Mario, I should say. You took us on a journey, and you gave us a lot of, practical insights. And I would say it is a very informative answer. So as much as we have other questions, we are receiving a lot of questions from the audience. So Mario, Rakib, can you see the questions?
Yes. Yeah.
All right. So we could address, I mean, due to the limited time, we'll try our best to address as many questions as we can. So, you could choose whichever question that you'd like to answer.
I think Rakib was going to do a quick demo.
I'm just going to do a quick demo of Power BI, and then I think
that answers the first question.
All right. I think
that
and also one more thing anyway. Before that, Rakib, we just missed on something. Remember, we promised about the practical demonstration. So yeah.
So I hope everybody can see my screen.
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah, okay, perfect. So this is what the Power BI desktop version generally looks like, right? At the top here, you have your home, insert, modeling, and the other tabs. But the main thing that you would be using on a regular basis is the get data function, which allows you to connect to a host of data sources, including SAP, Oracle, SharePoint, IBM, SQL. You can pretty much do anything right here. And it's, I think, around 300 plus data sources that are currently available that you can connect directly to, and then you can have your own API, your custom APIs that you can connect to in your custom, environments. If you do have that, it's perfectly all right. You can take a look at what are available. For example, the most common are Salesforce, Dynamics, SAP, Oracle, etc. Right? Then from here, you can connect to the data lake or Dataverse. Now it's called in Power Platform, where you have the holistic approach of you can basically bring any data from any place and store it there and analyze the data from there. It improves performance and everything, basically. And then you have on the right hand side all the tables that you've brought in for analytics. So this is again similar to Power Query, which many of you might be using on a regular basis. And if you look here, all of these are visuals that you can create from this data table. So in Power Pivot, as you know, you can only create a matrix in terms of tables, and it's very difficult. Sometimes I even find it very tedious to actually create a normal table as in comparison to a matrix. Right? But you can create hundreds of visuals using here, using the ones that are there as a standard, or you can, import from the Microsoft Store, which has multiple types of visuals that are available, right? The visuals that you create, however, are completely interactive. So if I, let's say, click on this particular item, I think, can you see it properly? Let me just change my screen. I think make it a little bit bigger. Let me reshare my screen. I'll move it to the other screen, basically. I think this is a bit better, I hope. So here, if you can see, you can basically click on any function, any visual, and it will filter everything down to what you want to see. So this is called the drill down feature. Right. So here you can basically go into any table and drill down to whatever you want to see. So if you want to see only earnings, you can see the earnings and it will define everything for you. Right. So on the left-hand side, what you have here is a table view. So this basically shows you a tabular view of all the data that you've brought in, and you can see whatever is there or should be there or shouldn't be there, you can decide, right? You can navigate on the right-hand side using the table tabs that you have here. And at the end, at the bottom here, you have your relationship manager. So this is where you're creating your data model, your complete analytics. So whatever analytics you're doing, this is where it takes place, basically. This is where your data model is,
Wow, talk
right?
about reporting
So
made easy.
yeah, it's very easy. If you had a SQL or any other platform that you're using, it would take a long time to create these data models, and it will be very difficult. So you don't have to go back and forth from your data administrators. You can just create it here and create your own visuals and reports as you like. And something that everybody will be familiar with, which is proprietary to Power BI, is Power Query. So this is something, again, we are all familiar with, something that we use on a regular basis. It's incorporated into Power BI, right? Where you can come here and you can do all the transformations that we would generally do. You can detect data, you can, change dates, convert to year, convert to month, you can pivot, you can unpivot, you can fill data. So that there are a lot of transformation features and functions that are available here, right? And you can basically create them by using drag and drops and buttons. If you want to create your own custom analytics or transformations, that you can also do using mQuery, which is the language that is used basically. So I think this is good enough for a brief introduction into what Power BI is. And in terms of capabilities, we've spoken in detail. For example, this is a profit and loss statement. This is a balance sheet report. So these will be, in more in-depth explored in the later phases of the workshop, basically, when we go into a course or anything like that. And then you have, let's say, a GL or general ledger that you want to create, and you can basically go into detail on anything. It allows you to filter data to whatever sector you want and have those filters active throughout. And yeah, basically it allows you to do a lot of things very quickly, which you would not be able to do in terms of an Excel or, let's say, Tableau in comparison, or other analytics tools that are available in the market. So I hope that helps a little bit to understand what Power BI is, what are the components that we have, and how it looks like. It's just a small introduction within the limited time that we have right now. So I'll hand it back over to you, Daniel. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rakib. I would say it was a spectacular demonstration. I think all of us, I would say every Tom, Dick, and Harry got a clear understanding, of what you explained. And it was so easy to understand. And I'm sure, but even I myself want, I'm dying to get to know more about the system and how it works. So I can see there are a lot of functionalities that Power BI does. And I completely understand we're unable to go through each and every one due to limited time. But yeah, it's a very, I would say it's a very interesting aspect that you just showed, Rakib. So now's the time that we have, that our audience, I should say, have been waiting for. So it's time for us to put the floor down in terms of answering their questions.
Mario, I think we'll go from top to bottom in terms of the questions.
Yeah.
I think you can start off. You can answer one, then I'll answer one.
Yeah. Hang on. Let me read the first question. Another key benefit of PBA is not on the Excel. You can directly pull data from direct sources. Is that a?
I think Mr. Ganeshan
Yeah.
Nivashkaran has asked a very good question.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. You believe this change would be adopted in short term, at least in Sri Lanka? Yeah, look, I think this is always a challenge, Ganesh, and I think I came across this challenge early in my career as well. It is very hard to convince people on investing in these tools, especially as accountants. We always try to cost cut or save costs. I think the best way to do it is do it in small doses. So where we start to influence very in smaller parts. So Power BI is the perfect tool to do that, because you can build one report and that looks really cool, and then you give it to them and say, hey, look, this is a piece of analysis that we've done. What do you think about it? Doesn't necessarily mean that you need to say that you did it in Power BI, but slowly start to introduce it to the business. And it is a long journey. It doesn't happen overnight. But once they start to see the benefits and how, what it can do, the organizations start to quickly adopt. Now, and the other thing that you could do to influence is around providing research around where the market's going. So a lot of the big four accounting firms do a lot of research around this, and there's a lot of information on Google that you can start to give them, your leaders or your senior leaders, to start building a little bit of knowledge base around it and what's happening in the global context.
I think that's great. And I'll take a question. Kirti has asked a question. The question is, are there any part-time contracting work as a Power BI analyst? So, Ms. Kirti, if you go to any freelancing workspace, or even, LinkedIn or Upwork or whatever you use to search for, jobs or any job platforms, basically, you will find a lot of contractual jobs are there. Right? Tasks are there, freelancing scope is there, and it's only increasing with the adaptation of Power BI and the speed at which it is being adapted. A lot of work is coming in, right? And again, answering along with that, Mr. Ajit's question is, let's say the tier one ERPs, right? If we take this is the question, they have their own BI tools. What is your recommendation? ERP own BI tools or Power BI, right? So if we use Power BI, what are the benefits then ERP own BI tools? So every single tier one ERP has their own analytics tool. That's the given, right? But what happens is majority of the time it's much easier to use Power BI rather than the proprietary tool, because again, if you think about it like this, every time you want to make a change or you want to update the report, that you want to make a little bit of a visual change in the report, you will have to always go back to the SAP or the ERP providers. That is a limiting factor in many of the cases. Whereas if you have direct access to the data using Power BI, you can make changes as and when you require. It's much more responsive, and it's much more easier to actually make these amendments and changes. However, there may be cases where, again, just as Mario said, that the senior management or leadership team may be reluctant to do that. In that cases, in you're kind of stuck with the tier one ERP's business analytics tools. So yeah.
I'll add to that, Rakib. I think it's a good question from Ajit, and in your point around the senior leadership might not necessarily want to move out, but I think learning Power BI will give you some really good skill set to transition into any of these tools. I work with Oracle Analytics Cloud, OBIE, and SAP side as well. So SAP BW. So it's Power BI is still a really good transferable skill. And you can, once you have that skill, it's easy to go to Oracle or whether it's SAP or whatever the tool is. Even Workday's got adaptive insights. So there's all these different tools. They all work similar, but Power BI is a lot more versatile, like Rakib said. But at the end of the day, it's more about the skill set and being able to transfer your skills across those different tools.
Yeah. So another question that I want to take is from Parani SL. So the question is, Power BI is integrated into Excel, or should we buy separately? So Power BI as a desktop tool, the desktop version is free. So you can download it and start using it for your personal use and learning without any payments, right? But if you want to take a more in-depth look at the cloud features or the machine learning features, data shareability features, then you have to buy a license. It can be a student account. You might have a student office account, or you may have a work account, office Outlook account that you have in your office. Then it's free. Along with that office account, it's free. So you can start using the online features of it for yourself as well. But again, if you want premium features, then you have to buy a license from Microsoft, which generally costs around $20 per month. And it can differ based on if you're buying it through your company or you're buying it personally, right? I think that answers the question. Mario, back to you.
Yeah, and I think Ajit's got couple more questions, so I might try and bundle them up. So the first one is around the skill set that you're an ACA, SAP, BICA consultant, and you got Power BI. I mean, that's brilliant. I think those skill sets will go really, really well in Australia, and I think it'll help you, help you pick up a role relatively easily. And there's a big demand in that space, especially a lot of the organizations are going through this cloud cloud ERP implementation still, especially sort of that mid-sized companies. Large organizations have moved, and they're now in the stage of more implementing reporting tools and AI. But the SME sector is still in that space that you can do like both sides of it. So, which is great skill set to have. Well, if I want to be a Power BI expert, what are the key elements? I think, Rakib, you're probably best placed to answer this one.
Well, yeah, absolutely. So if you want to be a Power BI expert, the key elements is practice. That's the only thing. You just practice making whatever dashboard you want. And another part is, I think you asked later on, is are there any tutorials available on YouTube? There are. You can take a look at it, you can use them and practice on a regular basis. It's a skill. It's not like riding a bike that you never forget. It's not like swimming that you never forget. If you don't practice it, you will forget. That's the reality of it, right? It's a skill that has to be practiced. So if you're learning Power BI, make sure you're practicing Power BI. Creating visuals, transformations, these are the main features. And of course, data modeling, which is the relationship building. Focus on these one and practice on a regular basis. Follow YouTube tutorials. There are many. It's a vast library of tutorials and examples that are available. Follow them and learn from them and practice them on a regular basis. Keep your skills sharp, just like knife when you're cooking. Yeah, Mario, I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, and what are the future threats that accountants who don't have any Power BI or AI? Look, it's a big threat because it is Gen AI is taking up very quickly, especially doing menial tasks like copy pasting, bringing spreadsheets, doing reconciliations, processing invoices, POs. All that stuff is getting heavily automated, and I think it is quite important to start understanding how the data flows, how the systems flow, and then at the end, how does the data come out, so then you can report on it. So if you don't understand either of those and you've got only a skill set around the transactional space, it's going to be difficult, and there's a big threat around it because that skill set is not going to be required for a lot longer in the longer term, because they'll be heavily done by AI and automation like RPAs. So hopefully that answers your question. And
I think, Mario, I want to take two questions, which are,
yeah,
I think,
okay.
very important.
Yeah.
One is from anonymous attendee, and the other one is from Chandila Deshan. So the first question is, what is the first step to learning Power BI? The first step is download Power BI Desktop, which is available for free. You can just Google right now and write Power BI download, desktop download, and you can download it and start playing around with it immediately. Practice some YouTube tutorials that are there and just, practice makes perfect. And the second question I think is very important from Chandila. Do we need language understanding to be Power BI experts? I would say no. The reason for that is you can download Power BI in your local language. So in all of the tabs, all of the functions, everything is mentioned in local language, right? So you can actually use Power BI to do that. If you speak, let's say, Sri Lankan or Sinhalese, you can actually have tutorials available in your local language online, right? Yes, you do need a little bit of English skill, but that's there, that's a given. But it is not a barrier for you to learn Power BI and become an expert, right? Even my German clients, they actually, this is weird for me, even my clients from Angola, Africa and Germany, they always use Power BI in their local language. So whenever they're transferring it back to me, I get everything in their local language, right? The local version of that. So you can actually download it, go to the advanced option, and you can select the language before you download. So that's completely there. And I think Microsoft has invested heavily. Again, as I said at the beginning, self-service. So every person they don't need to know English, right? But they can learn it in their own language locally. So it's not a problem at all. So please go ahead, download it, and download it in your local version so that you can start working on it immediately.
I might take the next question from Madhura. I think, yeah, other than the account analysis in Power BI can be used
If
for
you
any
could,
report writing
Mario,
purposes.
if you could
Right.
select the question, then it will be displayed publicly. So we
Okay,
can-
how do I hit answer live? Is that what I hit?
Yeah, answer
Yeah,
live. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Perfect. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so I think the answer is yes, depending on the use case. So you can do a lot of checks and exception checks and balances when you're doing auditing, especially in those Power BI reports. Yes, you can build it. Again, it's really being able to define the scope of what you want to achieve from Power BI. It's definitely you can do it. You just need to make sure that you're very clear on what you're trying to achieve. Because an analysis piece is more ad hoc, something more like an auditing or accounting for management purpose. I'm assuming accounting for management purpose is around reporting on a monthly basis to the board or something like that. So it has to be more like a standard report. So you'd want to maybe define a standard set of reports, a suite of reports that continuously refresh. So yeah, the answer is you can do it. You just have to be very clear up front on what you're trying to achieve from it. And Power BI has the capability to do it.
Okay, I'll take two questions. No, actually, three questions at a time. Yeah, so there are these three questions I'll take. So the first question is, can you briefly explain about workspace in Power BI? So workspace in Power BI is what you have in the online version of it. So if you have a report, you upload it to a particular workspace, right? That workspace can be for a group of people or an audience. Right. That audience can be part of a department, part of a team, part of a group in teams, doesn't matter. Right? That workspace is for that group of people, that teams basically. That's what a workspace is. Now, the second question is, does this course start from, if any, do you have any knowledge? Not clear about that question, so I won't take it. Okay, the last part is, how about deployment side of Power BI? Can we create pipeline to deploy to deploy Power BI, and is there a tutorials of deployment? Thank you in advance. So Power BI workspaces, you can publish your report there, and you can keep publishing there. So the deployment pipeline is very simple, and there are hundreds of tutorials available online. You can take a look at it. Yes.
Okay, so I would
Are we doing
say,
Daniel?
okay, I think there's a bit of a glitch. Okay, now. So yeah, as much as we have a lot of questions, since we have a limited time, we will address the rest of the questions, probably, in another session, or maybe you could always drop us a chat.
I think
there'll be more than
I'll just
happy
take
to
Miss
address.
Sonali's answer. She has directly
Yeah, of course.
directly addressed the question to me. If you don't mind, I'll just take 5 minutes
Yeah, of course.
of everybody's time. So Ms. Sonali has asked the following question. What about doing Masters of Business Analytics? That is a very good course to take, considering the upcoming future of business. Analytics is a very core part of business, it will be very good for your career, right? That's one. Which will be helpful for me to be a data analyst or financial analyst. Depends on which way you want to go. Financial analysts are not limited to only financial analysis. Mario has explained it. The role of the financial analyst is expanding to other sectors as well. They're taking logistics data and analyzing the cost benefit of it. They're taking, the cost impact of it. They're taking marketing data, analyzing the cost benefit of that. They're taking ESG data. They're taking banking data, forecast, predictive analytics, market data, and doing a massive level of analysis on the data that is available. So a data analyst and a financial analyst will not exactly be different in the future in terms of the role, but the purposes of each is different. So data analyst for general purposes, financial analyst is more of a very deep dive into investigative approach in terms of what cost the company is incurring and what benefit the company is getting, right? Then what kind of master's degree have the most vital will be the most vital in the future? Now, if you have the commerce degree, now uh, see, even if you're from a commerce background, for example, I'm a civil engineer, right, by profession, by training, but I've moved on to the data analytics sector at my way. I learned myself. I'm self-taught, right, and I'm doing well. No, the question is not what degree you have. right? What skill you develop. In this market, degree is not what's most important. It is it's a feather on your cap, but your cap is the skill, right? Remember that one. The degree is a feather on your cap, but your cap is the skill that you're developing, right? Remember that one. So a business analyst skill would be good, but I cannot give you a concrete answer on which master's degree would be the best for the future, right? But right now, business, if you're interested in business analytics, go for it. Go for that master's. I hope I was able to answer that clearly. But yeah,
I mean,
Daniel, I'll
since
hand
we
it
are
back
literally
over to you.
getting flooded with a lot of questions, we can, open the floor to maybe a couple of more questions. We'll just give a couple of minutes more.
Yeah, sure. Let me take one more. Maybe I might take Madhura's question around an anonymous attendee around can we use Power BI for marketing and administration? I think we've sort of definitely said, like, in terms of accounting, it doesn't limit you just in accounting. You can definitely use Power BI in a vast array of some use cases. It could be supply chain, it could be marketing, it could be sales, it can be ESG. So there's no limitation there. And to answer Madhura's question on that, can we customize Power BI tools to company requirements and business purposes? Definitely yes. You can make it look and feel like it's a company reporting tool. You can have your logos, you can have it your color themes. It's heavily customizable in that front end. So again, it comes down to making sure that you've got those requirements and what you want to achieve out of Power BI if you're doing a company-wide implementation.
So yeah, as much as we would like to take on more questions, see, we have very limited time. You're already running out of time. And I'm sure you guys want to sleep as well, Mario, don't you think? You are well beyond, I would say.
I might just answer the
late for
last
you.
question around. Sorry, I might just answer one question. Do we need to masters in Excel to learn Power BI? Look, I think, Rakib, I think you might agree with me or disagree with me. I don't think you had to be a master in Excel. You just need to know how to use Excel to an extent, and you can definitely.
I agree with you on this one. Yeah.
Yeah, you can definitely learn Power BI relatively easily.
Okay. So right. So we will, I mean, it doesn't mean that we'll be done with the questions. I mean, we could always address the questions. So probably, once you enroll probably to the training course, you could always ask as many questions as you want from our key personnel, and they'll be more than happy to, assist you in terms of the answers. Else you could always drop us a mail, and we'll be more than happy to get you clarified. So, okay, so we are introducing, since we recognized the lack, I would say, of such competencies in Sri Lanka, and specifically in terms of accounting. There are a lot of other industries out there. There are a lot of institutes, but being an Australian company, we have all the rights to do it, and we have implemented and we have compiled a course just for you guys. So introducing, the job enhancement training in Microsoft Power BI for accountants. And you can see all the modules that are mentioned very clearly. So it's going to kick off. We'll be having this. We are planning to commence it on the 28th of October, which is a Saturday. And the conducting hours are typically from 8:30 to 12:30. That is in Indian Standard Time. The mode of delivery, here's the best part. The mode of delivery is 100% remote, which means online. So you could easily, you don't need to worry about, where you are located or the setting. You could always, join in from the comfort of your own phone.